Did you know that you don't need a pressure cooker to make oxtail that completely falls off the bone and melts in your mouth? You just need 3 hours of simmering in a pot over a regular stovetop. It's easy enough that I can make it weekly during the wintertime. I love to slurp down a big bowl of the pure and comforting beef soup, and I make it anytime I'm feeling under the weather. Today we visited several shops to find just the right cut of oxtail. For the most tender meat, I use fresh, never frozen oxtail. It's hard to tell how long frozen oxtail has been sitting in the store's freezer, so you might end up with a tough piece that's lost its flavor. I've always had the best experience with fresh oxtail. Next tip. Choose Cut-to-the-Joints Oxtail. This refers to the fact that the oxtail is separated into pieces by cutting through the cartilage between each piece of vertebrae, which you can see here, rather than cutting through bone. This keeps the connective tissues intact, so that no part of the meat inside ends up being over or undercooked. You will also avoid bone shards. Finally, I use untrimmed oxtail, which means that all of the original tendon, silver skin, fat, and cartilage are all still on the oxtail. These treasured parts are what make my oxtail pho smell so heavenly when it's cooking, and they give the resulting soup so much more complex flavor that I just can't get from other cuts of beef. Next, let's prepare the beef marrow pike bones, the soul of an umami bowl of pho. Rinse them to remove any loose bone fragments. Now, let's get cooking. Heat a large wide pot over medium heat. It should get hot enough that any water left on the pot completely evaporates. Add the canola oil and give it a swirl to coat the pot evenly. Once the oil is hot as well, add your chopped onions and ginger. Then stir-fry them to coat them evenly in the oil. Cover the pot and lower the stove to low to medium heat. Stir-fry occasionally until the onion just starts to brown. Now it's time to brown the oxtail. I brown the oxtail pieces until each side is lightly but evenly seared, before the bottom of the pot starts to burn. This makes for a flavorful soup that is still gentle enough to drink every day. Browning also helps keep the oxtail evenly tender and flavorful. We want to lock more flavor and moisture in the actual meat during the 3 hours of simmering, while letting the connective tissue dissolve and flavor the soup. You'll end up with a beautiful amber soup that tastes like ambrosia, with pieces of oxtail that still have their comforting, full beefy taste. By the way, it helps to have a pair of tongs to hold the oxtail pieces in place and sear the uneven parts. We've gotten a good sear on each side of the meat. Now, add the water for the soup into the pot. Then add the spices directly into the soup. I prefer not to use a spice sachet because I found that I get much more flavor from letting the spices swim around in the whole pot. Now, cover the pot, increase to high heat, and bring to a simmer. Once simmering, add the beef bones, and bring to a simmer again. Add the seasoning directly into the soup. After this, you just need to cover the pho and gently simmer it for 3 hours. With a gentle simmer, you should see small to medium bubbles throughout the pot, rising continuously to the surface. Manage the heat accordingly to maintain a gentle simmer constantly for 3 hours. Too low and the temperature of the soup won't be high enough to dissolve the tendon. In the meanwhile, you can get to washing and prepping your toppings. These are our family's favorites. We're sensitive to the taste of raw onion, so we like to put it directly in the bowl first to have it be scalded by the soup before eating. Toppings depend on mood, too. I enjoy being able to first taste my pho plain and enjoy its natural flavors. It's perfect for those dark, early March mornings when I wake up with a neck ache, way too early and groggy from 4 drinks. But then a few spoonfuls of the soup grabs me out of my torpor and melancholic nostalgia, and I'll soon crave a more lively taste, and then I'll be thankful for the fish sauce and lime on the side. Well, after a few more hours of ruminating, the awaited moment has arrived. It's time to check on the oxtail. A good test is to see if you can easily slide a chopstick into the meat. It looks perfect. You can also see how the silver skin has dissolved, and the meat is jiggling off the bone too. Set the soup pot aside and bring water to a boil in a separate pot for the noodles. Add the noodles to the boiling water and give them a quick mix to prevent sticking. Bring back to a simmer, then simmer the noodles until they are slippery but not breaking. This should take no more than 30 seconds, and depending on your noodles, they may even be done cooking in between 10 to 20 seconds. Immediately pour the noodles into a large noodle strainer and rinse the noodles thoroughly under cold water. This prevents the noodles from overcooking and rinses away extra starch. Finally, give the noodle basket a good shake to get rid of excess water that could dilute your soup. Place the pho pot back on the stove and bring it to a boil. Then give it a good mix with a ladle. Ladle the soup through a fine sieve into each bowl until the noodles are almost fully covered. Like I mentioned earlier, I like to have a taste test of the soup first. Yum, I really felt that soup throughout my whole body. It's tantalizing with a multi-dimensioned beef flavor that's still gentle and comforting. I think it works really well with the lemony, fragrant taste of cilantro, so I'm adding some to my soup. Now I'm so ready to get into the oxtail. It's so tender and dissolves in my mouth, but it's still meaty and satisfying. Even the smaller pieces are perfectly tender. And there you have it, the most tender oxtail you can make, and you don't even need a pressure cooker. By the way, if you do use a pressure cooker to cook your oxtail, I am open to recommendations. I think it would be so fun to learn how to cook using a new appliance. Cooking and eating make me happy, so I definitely want to do more of that.